What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to All Sports Talk with Peter Burtnett, bringing you another recap episode going in-depth in Wildcard Weekend. I do want to start, though, before diving in. Just finished watching the Monday Night Football game. I want to start by wishing prayers and just my support, hoping for the recovery for Russell Gage. Suffered a scary-looking neck injury, had to be carried off the field on a stretcher, so just praying for his health. I'm probably going to edit this video tomorrow morning, and if there's any sort of update, I'll put that up on the screen. But again, just wishing for him to be fully healthy. You obviously never want to see that, especially when a game is out of hand, like the Monday Night Football playoff game was. But now shifting gears into Wildcard Weekend, it began with a pretty competitive first half. In the Seahawks at 49ers game, the Niners jumped ahead 10-0. Seattle made things really interesting. Geno Smith was getting things done. Their defense made some stops, and they brought it to 17-16 at halftime. But after the half, a huge game for Brock Purdy, continuing to step up into this role of being a dependable quarterback who makes the plays he needs to and even goes a step above. You talk about game managers, but I think Purdy is genuinely more than that. It helps to have a guy like Christian McCaffrey who finished with 119 yards on 15 rushes. Obviously, Deebo Samuel, I think, finished with over 100 receiving yards. And the leading receiver was DK Metcalf, had a big game. 10 catches, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns, but the Niners pulled away and wound up winning 41-23. The second game, I'm going to attach a video that I made of a short kind of breaking down the games from Saturday night here. The big story, though, is the Jacksonville Jaguars come back to stun the Los Angeles Chargers in Duval, in Jacksonville, down 27-0 at halftime. Look, let's be honest, we all thought the game was over. I did think in the back of my mind, this is either going to be the worst playoff performance in history by a quarterback, or it's going to be the best second half by a quarterback ever, and Trevor Lawrence delivered, finished with just shy of 300 yards, obviously countered the 4 first-half interceptions with 4 touchdowns in the second half. Got a 2-point conversion good. Doug Peterson is a phenomenal coach, and the Jacksonville Jaguars advance to the Divisional Round with a 31-30 victory over the Chargers. But in addition to that, the Jags, unbelievable. Just kind of diving in, because that video was short, I want to add a few extra thoughts here. Trevor Lawrence had one of the best bounce backs between 2 different halves in NFL history. Doug Peterson making a ballsy call to go for 2 to cut the deficit to 30-28. Jacksonville's defense stepped up, and the Chargers, they've kind of similarly when I talk about the Giants-Vikings game, they just didn't look like a team that could get it done in these important games. And down the stretch, the Jaguars did. I think they started 2-6, and so you win 7 out of 9 games to finish the regular season. And, you could argue their division is bad. You could argue a bunch of other things, make a bunch of excuses, but Trevor Lawrence never wavered. The Jacksonville defense stepped up. Brandon Staley made, some questionable calls here and there. And obviously the biggest consequence was him playing Mike Williams last week. I think having that receiver for Justin Herbert to throw to could have made a difference down the stretch. But moving now into Sunday, the Dolphins and Bills, pretty similar to the 49ers-Seahawks game in the first half. Bills run ahead 14-0. Another quick start for them after the start to their regular season finale with Nyheim Hines running back the opening kickoff. Josh Allen had a decent game, but something I've heard Colin Cowherd talking a lot about is how he's prone to mistakes, and he did that again. He threw 2 interceptions. He fumbled once, finished with 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, he has that star power to be able to put up numbers like that and to get a win. But at the same time, he can allow a team, a potentially even better team like the Bengals team they're going to be facing up next to get back into the game. And so the Dolphins made things interesting, 20-17 at the half, but then the Bills quickly went up by 10 once again in the third quarter, and they just kind of kept the Dolphins at arm's reach, and the Dolphins were unable to come back. I think they're one of the top teams to keep an eye on. They finished the regular season 9-8, but Tua Tagovailoa is another player that I just hope he's able to get to full health, and that the Dolphins can figure out their offensive line so he doesn't continue to get hit like he does. And it's kind of like Joe Burrow. Burrow had the injury that he dealt with, definitely a different type of injury for Tua. But I think the Dolphins are really going to be a team to watch next year, along with the Jets. The Bills are going to have their hands full in that division next year, but they also are going to have their hands full against their next opponent. Another player, he didn't have big-time numbers, Devin Singletary, the Buffalo running back. From watching the game, I thought he had bigger numbers than this, 10 carries, 48 yards, and maybe they had a couple of other backs who were making some big runs too. But definitely one thing I know for sure Singletary was able to do was to pick up kind of a few big first downs, especially kind of in the middle of the game, maybe a little bit late as well. But just 4.8 yards per rush is a good total to have. And then obviously Stephon Diggs having a huge game, 7 receptions, 114 yards. And he has to be happy he's not stuck with Kirk Cousins. And that leads into the next game, the New York Giants, once again being that 9-7, 9-7-1 this year, that average record, but when they get to the playoffs, they just seem to be able to get wins, especially when they're kind of these underdogs, or some people were kind of probably the popular upset pick in this round for some people, myself included. But they kind of jumped ahead early. Saquon Barkley had a good game, a couple of touchdowns. He actually was outrushed by Daniel Jones, 78 rushing yards for the Giants quarterback. But the Giants were ahead late, 31-24, and on a fourth down play with, I believe, a little over a minute to go, Kirk Cousins, for whatever reason, and not to dig on him too much, but at times, especially the thing has been primetime Kirk Cousins, and that came back to bite the Vikings again. He threw it short on 4th and 8, threw it 3 yards out, and I think it was maybe to T.J. Hawkinson, who, fair play. He had 10 receptions for 129 yards in the game, but he had a defender right on him on the play, and it simply was not the right pass there. And going into this game, the Vikings had a -3 point differential, even at 13-4, and so again, even at home, a pretty easy upset pick here, I think. And what a win for the Giants. Daniel Jones is establishing himself as the Giants franchise quarterback, and he has a different style of play, but the way he's just kind of taken over that team, maybe dealt with some doubt, and has led the Giants now to a playoff victory, definitely reminds me of Eli Manning. I was talking to my brother, Johnny, if you're watching this, go Giants, all hail the New York Giants. If you get that reference, then you're a real one, but they have just a way of getting this sort of thing done. Jones finished with 301 yards, 2 touchdowns. Danny Dimes with a huge game for the New York Giants to move him into the divisional round against the Eagles. Rounding out Sunday's game against another bird team, the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the Baltimore Ravens. This was a pretty kind of classic AFC North battle, especially, it's a typical when you see teams face off 3 times. Normally when they get to that third time, not always like the Seahawks and 49ers, but normally that final matchup is tight, at least early, which again obviously was the case in the Seahawks-Niners. But Bengals and Ravens, it was 10-9 Ravens at the half. Not a great game all around for Joe Burrow. He got things done he needed to, in a sense, but at the same time, the Ravens, the play of the game, if you watched the game or if you didn't, the Ravens drove down the field. Tyler Huntley had a pretty good game passing the ball, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. But they went with a sneak. And after the game, J.K. Dobbins, former Buckeye running back who finished with 62 yards on the ground, said that it wasn't really fair for Huntley to have to be in a position on this play, but he goes with a sneak and he isn't quite able to reach the ball over the goal line. Logan Wilson, this is the Bengals linebacker, knocks the ball out. Sam Hubbard, another former Buckeye, picks the ball up, runs 98 yards, 99 yards, one of the longest returns, obviously, in NFL playoff history, is able to get a good block. Some, mostly probably Ravens fans would question if it was a block in the back. That's up for debate, I guess. I'm not going to dive into that too much because either way, the play stood. Sam Hubbard went into the end zone and gave the Bengals a massive shift in the game, and the Ravens were never able to get anything going after that. So that rounds out Sunday's games, and then tonight's game, it was a kind of boring first half. The most entertaining thing was Brett Maher missing 3 extra points. Cowboys went ahead 18-0 at the break, and then continued to just kind of pour it on. Bucs made a little bit of a charge late. Tom Brady, the amount of times that they throw the ball is just insane. He finished with 66 attempts, completing 35 for 351 yards and 2 touchdowns. But it was a big game for Dak Prescott. He's had so many doubters, especially come playoff time. But he finished with 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and the Cowboys were able to pick up a rare playoff win. And so that's the breakdown of this week. I'm going to now offer my predictions for the divisional round, and fingers crossed that I don't jinx things, but I went a perfect 6-6 in the wild card round. If you want to go back and verify that, you definitely can. I think that's episode 3 of this podcast of All Sports Talk, and so let's see if we can keep that going. Starting with Saturday's games, you got the Jaguars at Kansas City Chiefs off a bye. Both 1 seeds actually play on Saturday. So kind of similar dynamics for both of them. I think the Jaguars, you can't count them out. They've proven that. And so I think they're definitely going to battle. I think the first half is probably close, but I think just the work effort that they've had to put in to get to this point kind of leaves them a little bit exhausted. The Chiefs, they could be a little rusty. I think that's what might keep the first half close. But you got Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and the rest of that offense that is just so dangerous. Even with the losses of Tyreek Hill from last year, they're still probably the top offense in the NFL. And so I think Chiefs kind of run away with it late, and I'm gonna go with a 38-21 final, so the pretty comfortable 17-point win. Going into the Saturday nightcap, the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles. Already talked in depth about the Giants, and I'll take this moment to talk about it because it's something that I kind of just observed watching the games. It's so cool to see Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley both back on the field doing what they do best. Running over and around and past defenders and making huge plays on the field. They both dealt with injuries that kept him out for most of a couple of seasons in a row. And so seeing both of those guys out on the field competing and playing at a high level and leading their teams to playoff wins is really cool to see. I'm not a fan of either one of those teams, but I am a fan of both of those players. And again, it's just so cool to see them back out there. But on this game, I think it's really going to hinge on Jalen Hurts, whether or not he's fully healthy. Obviously he played in their Week 18 matchup with which the Giants kept close, but wasn't his best game first coming back from injury. So I think it'll be interesting. He's now not only just healed from it with how time heals, it'll be 2 weeks later, but also had a full week. I'm sure probably took it maybe a little bit light unless he is fully 100% in practice. But I think if he remains healthy, the Eagles kind of similar. It is tough to make this prediction though because the Giants, I saw a graphic the last 2 times that they've won the first round in the playoffs, which was 2007 and 2011, they've gone on to win the Super Bowl. Every other year they made the playoffs from like 2002 until now. If they either won the Super Bowl or they lost. And so definitely, it's hard to pick against the Giants in this case. I think this one is closer. First time these two teams faced off, it was 48-22 Eagles. Second time with, probably not the Eagles' A game was 22-16 Eagles. It's tough to win 3 times, but the Niners did it against the Seahawks, and I think the Eagles do it here. I'm going to go with maybe a late score to make it maybe a double-digit game, but I'm going to go with 34-24, the Eagles win. Now, moving into Sunday's game, I'm going to start with the game that is probably going to be talked about on all the channels, all the networks, the most really, I think, out of any of these matchups, potentially. And I'll get into why that's, definitely these Sunday games are going to have the most exposure. That's Cincinnati Bengals at the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, this is the game that was so hyped going into it, cut short Monday Night Football when Damar Hamlin went into cardiac arrest and was rushed to the hospital. Praise God, he's doing better now. He's been around the team facility in Buffalo, which is really cool. And the Bills, well, they didn't play their best game against the Dolphins, neither did the Bengals, so I think both teams are going to be looking, obviously, not only for the win, but to step up their play from the last game. This one, I think it's tough because the Bills would look like the favorite with the offense that they have and the defense that they have, but the Bengals have, they've got Joe Burrow at quarterback. They've got a defense that really stepped up, again, against a limited Ravens team without Lamar Jackson. But I think this one is down to the wire. I think it's back and forth. I think maybe it depends on the weather in Buffalo, too. I'm not sure if there's any chance of snow. It's 6 days out. Not like the Bengals would find that a challenge, but the offenses both would. I think in this game, the Bills do have enough to get it done. Before the season, they were my pick from the AFC. Not like that was going out on a limb or anything. I'm definitely torn. I was going back and forth in my mind about which team to pick in this one. Maybe it's a little bit of that Ohio connection, even though I am a Browns fan. But I think the Bills get it done and punch their ticket to the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs in a rematch of that huge, incredible overtime game from last year, and even from their really good regular season game this year that I was actually fortunate enough to be able to attend. Finally, the Cowboys 49ers. Dak Prescott now has that playoff win under his belt, but I don't think there's a team in the NFL right now that's playing better than the San Francisco 49ers. And while it might not be quite the same home field advantage as it was at Candlestick Park, I think it is an advantage playing at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara. And I think maybe some of the mistakes that have bit him before will come back to bite Dak Prescott against a tougher defense than what he faced with the Buccaneers. Yeah, the Buccaneers still have some names on their defense, but they're not playing nearly at the same level as they did when they won that Super Bowl a couple years ago. So I think the Niners get it done. I hate to pick all home teams, but I think when you get to the divisional round is where it kind of separates the real contenders from the pretenders. But I've got, in this one, I didn't give my score for the last one. I'll put it up in post. But for this one, I'm going to go with 49ers 30, Cowboys 21. So a 9-point win for the 49ers. They'd advance then to face the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's my rundown of Wildcard Weekend and look ahead and predictions for the divisional round. I hope you enjoyed the Wildcard Weekend, Super Wildcard Weekend, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in this Saturday's game, this weekend's games. Saturday games are definitely still some good games, and it's really crunch time now in the NFL. But that's it for this episode. I'm Peter Burtonette. This is All Sports Talk. If you've watched this far into the video and you enjoyed, please leave a like and leave a comment on your thoughts on Wildcard Weekend and maybe your predictions for the Divisional Round. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to be able to see some comments on some of these videos. And again, thank you so much for watching. This is Peter, All Sports Talk, signing out. Peace.